Being alone does not mean you are lonely. Silence is where your strongest thoughts are born. Have you ever sat alone in a quiet room and felt something inside you finally settle down? That feeling is not empty. It is your mind finally getting the space it needs to think clearly. Most people spend their whole lives running from silence, filling every moment with noise, afraid of what they might feel if they stopped moving. But solitude holds something powerful. It holds healing, clarity, and a version of yourself you have never truly met. In the next few minutes, you will understand why the loneliest moments often become the most life-changing ones. If you're ready to finally understand the quiet strength hiding inside you, then stay with me until the very end. Number 1. Explain why solitude builds inner strength most people fear. I want you to think about the last time you were truly alone. Not lonely, alone. Just you, your thoughts, and the quiet room around you. Most people cannot sit in that silence for more than a few minutes before they reach for their phone or turn on the television. They feel a strange discomfort creeping in, and they rush to fill that space with noise. Today I want to talk to you about why that discomfort exists, and why the people who learn to sit with it end up stronger than everyone else around them. Let me tell you something about human nature. We are wired to seek connection. Our ancestors survived by staying close to the tribe, because being alone often meant danger. That instinct is still inside us today, even though the dangers have changed. So when you sit alone in a quiet room, some old part of your brain starts sending signals that something is wrong. Your heart might beat a little faster. Your mind might start racing, searching for something to distract itself. This is not weakness. This is simply how we are built. But here is the important part. The people who push through that discomfort, who stay in the silence anyway, they build something that the rest of the world never develops. They build inner strength. Think of a young tree standing alone on a hillside, exposed to strong winds every single day. That tree does not have other trees around it to block the wind or share the weight of the storm. At first, this seems like a disadvantage. But over the years, that lone tree grows a trunk that is thicker and roots that dig deeper into the ground than any tree growing in a crowded forest. The wind that could have destroyed it actually made it stronger, because it had no choice but to adapt on its own. Solitude works on people the same way it works on that tree. When you remove the noise, the distractions, and the constant approval of others, you are forced to face yourself directly. And that direct confrontation is where real strength is born. I have met so many people over the years who could not handle being alone with their own thoughts. They fill every moment with music, conversation, or scrolling on their phones, because silence feels like an enemy to them. But I have also met people who learn to welcome solitude, and I can tell you, there is a calmness in their eyes that the busy crowd does not have. They speak slower, they think deeper. They make decisions with more confidence, because they have already spent time working through their fears and doubts when nobody else was watching. That is the real difference between a person who fears solitude and a person who has learned to use it. Here is something I want you to understand about fear. Fear grows in the dark corners of your mind that you never visit. When you are always surrounded by people, always distracted by noise, you never actually walk into those dark corners. You avoid them. But those fears do not disappear just because you avoid them. They sit there quietly, growing bigger, waiting for a moment when you are forced to face them. Solitude gives you the chance to walk into those corners on your own terms, with a clear head, instead of being ambushed by your fears during a moment of crisis. This is why people who spend time alone often handle sudden hardship better than people who never do. They have already practiced facing difficult emotions in a calm setting. I remember learning this lesson watching people in business. The ones who could sit alone with a difficult problem, without needing someone else to tell them what to think, were the ones who came up with the most original solutions. The ones who always needed a group around them to bounce ideas off often ended up following the crowd instead of leading it. There is nothing wrong with teamwork, and I am not telling you to cut people out of your life. But I am telling you that if you never learn to think alone first, you will always depend on others to tell you who you are and what you should believe. That dependency is a quiet kind of weakness that many people carry without even realizing it. Now let us talk about the emotional side of this. When you are alone, you cannot hide behind a smile for someone else. You cannot perform. You cannot pretend everything is fine just to keep the mood light for the people around you. In solitude, your true emotions rise to the surface, whether you like it or not. This can feel uncomfortable at first, maybe even painful. You might feel sadness you had been pushing away for weeks. You might feel anger you never had time to process. But feeling these emotions honestly, without an audience, is exactly how healing begins. A person who never allows themselves this honest moment carries unprocessed pain for years, and that pain leaks out in other areas of their life without them understanding why. I want you to picture a person sitting by a window early in the morning, before the rest of the house wakes up. The light is soft, the air is still, and there is no one demanding their attention. In that quiet moment, they can finally hear their own thoughts clearly, without the noise of other people's opinions mixing in. That clarity is priceless. It cannot be bought, and it cannot be rushed. It only comes through repeated practice of choosing solitude instead of running from it. Over time, that person becomes someone who trusts their own judgment, because they have tested their thoughts in silence and found out which ones are actually true for them. Building inner strength through solitude is not about becoming cold or shutting people out of your life. It is about becoming someone who does not fall apart the moment they are left without company. It is about becoming someone who can stand steady in a storm, because they have already spent quiet hours learning who they are underneath all the noise. Most people fear solitude because it forces them to meet themselves honestly, without any decoration or performance. But that honest meeting is exactly where strength is built, brick by brick, one quiet moment at a time. Number 2, show how quiet time sharpens focus and clear thinking. Think about the last time you tried to solve a real problem while the television was on. Your phone was buzzing, and someone was talking in the next room. Your mind kept jumping from one thing to another, never settling anywhere long enough to actually think. Now think about a different moment, maybe early in the morning or late at night, when the house was silent, and your mind finally had room to breathe. That is the difference I want to talk about today. Quiet time is not just peaceful. It is one of the most powerful tools you have for building sharp focus and clear thinking, and most people never use it on purpose. Your brain can only handle so much information at one time. Every sound, every conversation, every notification pulls a small piece of your attention away from whatever you are trying to focus on. Most people do not realize how much mental energy is wasted every single day just processing background noise. When you remove that noise, even for a short period, your mind stops splitting its attention and starts directing all of its power toward one single task. This is why so many great thinkers throughout history sought out quiet places to work. They understood something simple but important. A busy mind cannot think deeply. Only a calm mind can. Let me give you a picture of this. Imagine a glass of water that has been shaken up, full of dirt and sand swirling around inside. If you try to look through that glass, you cannot see anything clearly. But if you set that glass down and let it sit still for a while, the dirt slowly settles to the bottom, and the water becomes clear. Your mind works the exact same way. When you are constantly busy, constantly surrounded by noise and people, your thoughts stay stirred up, mixed together, and confused. But when you sit in quiet solitude, your thoughts slowly settle, and clarity rises to the top. This is not something that happens instantly. It takes patience, but it always happens if you give it enough time. I want to talk about something called mental fatigue, because this is where most people are losing their focus without even knowing it. Every decision you make during the day, from what to eat to how to respond to a message, uses up a small amount of mental energy. By the end of the day, most people are running on empty, and that is exactly when they try to do their most important thinking. This is backwards. Quiet time in solitude allows your mind to recover that lost energy. It is like plugging your brain into a charger. Without regular quiet time, you are constantly trying to think clearly with a mind that is running low on power, and that is why so many good ideas get lost in the noise of a busy life. There is also something deeply emotional about quiet time that people often overlook. When you are alone in silence, you are not performing for anyone. You are not trying to sound smart or impressive. You can let your thoughts move slowly, without judgment, without an audience watching your every reaction. This freedom removes a huge amount of pressure from your mind. And when pressure is removed, thinking becomes easier and more honest. Many people discover their best ideas not in meetings or conversations, but in quiet moments, like a walk alone, or sitting still with a cup of coffee before the day begins. I believe this happens because the mind finally feels safe enough to explore without fear of being judged. Now let me give you a practical way to understand this. Focus is like a beam of light. When that light is spread out over a wide area, it is weak and cannot cut through anything. But when that same amount of light is focused into a single narrow point, it becomes powerful enough to burn through material. Your attention works exactly the same way. In a noisy environment, your attention is spread thin across many distractions, and it becomes weak and ineffective. In quiet solitude, that same attention becomes focused into one narrow point, and it becomes powerful enough to solve problems that seemed impossible in a noisy room. This is not a small difference. This is the difference between wasting hours accomplishing very little and using 30 focused minutes to accomplish more than an entire distracted day. I also want to mention something about memory and learning, because this connects directly to clear thinking. Studies in psychology have shown that the brain needs quiet time to properly store and organize new information. When you are constantly busy and never give your mind a break, information gets jumbled together, and it becomes harder to recall clearly when you need it. But when you build quiet time into your routine, your brain gets the chance to sort through everything you have learned and file it away properly. This is why people who study or work in constant noise often struggle to remember what they learned, while people who take quiet breaks tend to understand and retain information much more deeply. I have noticed something interesting about successful people over the years. Many of them protect their quiet time as if it were one of their most valuable possessions. And honestly, I believe it is. They wake up early before anyone else is awake, or they take a walk alone without their phone, or they sit in a quiet room just to think without interruption. They are not doing this because they are antisocial or cold. They are doing this because they understand that clear thinking does not happen by accident. It happens when you deliberately create the right environment for your mind to work at its best. If you want sharper focus and clearer thinking in your own life, you cannot wait for quiet moments to randomly happen to you. You have to protect them and build them into your day on purpose, the same way you would protect any other valuable resource that helps you grow and succeed. Number 3, teach why great decisions are born in silence alone. Think about the biggest decision you ever made in your life. Did it come to you in the middle of a loud party, surrounded by people talking over each other? Or did it come to you in a quiet moment, maybe lying awake at night, or sitting alone somewhere, with nothing but your own thoughts for company? I would guess it was the second one. Today I want to explain why this happens, and why every great decision you will ever make in your life is going to be shaped in silence, not in noise. When you are surrounded by other people, you are constantly influenced by their opinions, their reactions, and their expectations of you. Even if nobody says a single word, you can feel the pressure of what they might think about your choice. This pressure changes the way you decide. You start leaning toward the option that will keep the peace, or the option that will impress the people around you, instead of the option that is actually right for your life. This is not weakness. This is simply human nature, because we are social creatures who care deeply about how others see us. But if you want to make a decision that truly reflects what you want and what you believe, you have to remove that outside pressure completely, and the only way to do that is through silence and solitude. I want you to think about the mind as a busy marketplace, full of different voices shouting different opinions all at once. Your mother's voice telling you to be careful, your friend's voice telling you to be careful, your own fear whispering that you might fail, your own excitement whispering that this could be the best decision of your life. In a noisy environment, all these voices blend together into confusion, and you end up making a decision based on whichever voice happened to shout the loudest at that moment. But in silence, something different happens. The voices slow down, they separate from each other, and for the first time, you can actually hear your own true voice clearly, without it being drowned out by everyone else. Let me explain something about the emotional weight of decisions. Big decisions, the kind that change the direction of your life, always come with fear attached to them. This is normal, but fear behaves differently depending on your environment. In a noisy, busy setting, fear gets pushed down and ignored, only to resurface later as doubt or regret. In silence, fear gets the chance to be examined honestly. You can sit with that fear, look at it directly, and ask yourself what it is really trying to protect you from. Sometimes fear is trying to protect you from real danger, and you should listen to it. Other times, fear is simply trying to protect you from discomfort, and that is exactly the kind of fear you need to move through. Silence gives you the space to tell the difference between these two kinds of fear, and that difference alone can change the entire outcome of your decision. I have watched people rush into decisions simply because they wanted to escape the discomfort of not knowing. They would rather make the wrong choice quickly than sit with uncertainty for a while longer. This happens because uncertainty feels unbearable in a noisy, busy life, where everything moves fast and everyone expects an answer right away. But when you step into silence, uncertainty becomes easier to hold. You are not being rushed by outside pressure. You can sit with the unknown, turn it over in your mind, examine it from different angles, and wait until real clarity arrives, instead of settling for a fast answer just to relieve the discomfort. This patience, built through silence, is one of the most underrated skills in decision-making that I have seen throughout my life. There is also something powerful that happens to your body in silence, not just your mind. When you are alone in a quiet space, your breathing slows down, your heart rate settles, your shoulders relax. This physical calmness has a direct effect on how you think. A body that is tense and rushed produces a mind that is tense and rushed, and that combination leads to poor decisions made out of panic rather than wisdom. But a body that is calm and still produces a mind that can think with patience and depth. This is why so many people describe their best ideas coming to them during a quiet walk, or while sitting alone watching the sky, rather than during a stressful meeting filled with pressure and noise. I want to give you a real example of how this plays out in everyday life. Imagine someone deciding whether to leave a job that pays well but leaves them feeling empty every single day. If they only talk to friends and family about this decision, they will hear a dozen different opinions, some encouraging them to stay for financial safety, others encouraging them to leave for personal happiness. All these opinions are valuable, but none of them can make the decision for that person. Only in a quiet moment alone, away from all those voices, can that person finally ask themselves honestly what they truly want, and listen closely enough to hear the answer. That is the moment a great decision is born, not in the noisy conversation with others, but in the silent conversation with themselves. I believe silence works almost like a filter for the mind. Everything you have heard from other people, every opinion, every piece of advice, every fear someone else has passed on to you, sits inside your head like an unsorted pile. Silence gives you the chance to go through that pile slowly, keeping what truly belongs to you and setting aside what belongs to someone else. Without silence, that pile just keeps growing, and you end up making decisions based on other people's fears and beliefs, mistaking them for your own. This is one of the most important reasons why solitude and quiet reflection are not luxuries. They are necessary tools for anyone who wants to live a life built on decisions that are truly their own, rather than decisions borrowed from the noise of everyone else around them. Number 4. Reveal how solitude heals wounds noise keeps hidden inside. There is a kind of pain that many people carry every single day without ever addressing it, because they never give themselves the chance to slow down long enough to feel it. They wake up, they rush through their tasks, they talk to people, they scroll through their phones, and they fall asleep exhausted, only to repeat the same pattern the next day. In all that motion, there is no room left to feel what is actually happening inside them. Today I want to talk about something important. The wounds you are carrying, the ones that noise has been helping you avoid, do not disappear just because you stay busy. They wait quietly for the moment you finally sit still, and solitude is the place where healing truly begins. Think about a wound on your skin. If you keep covering it with a bandage without ever cleaning it properly, it might look fine on the outside, but underneath, it continues to cause problems. Emotional wounds work in a very similar way. Noise and constant busyness act like that bandage. They cover the pain, they hide it from view, and they give you the feeling that everything is fine, when in reality, the wound underneath is still there, untouched and unhealed. Solitude removes that bandage. It forces you to look directly at what is underneath. And although this can feel uncomfortable at first, it is the only way real healing can actually take place. I have noticed something interesting about people who avoid being alone. Very often, it is not because they enjoy constant activity. It is because being alone forces them to face feelings they have been running from for a long time. Grief they never fully processed. Disappointment they never admitted to themselves. Anger towards someone they still care about. These feelings sit quietly in the background of a busy life, and the moment the noise stops, they rise to the surface. This is exactly why silence can feel so uncomfortable for someone who has been avoiding their emotions for years. But I want you to understand something important. That discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that healing is finally being given the chance to happen. Let me explain this from an emotional perspective, because I think this is where the real value lies. When you experience something painful, whether it is a loss, a failure, or a broken relationship, your mind naturally wants to process that experience and make sense of it. But if you never give it quiet time to do this work, the processing never finishes. It gets left incomplete, like a task interrupted halfway through. And an incomplete emotional task does not just disappear. It stays open in the background of your mind, quietly draining your energy and affecting your mood, even when you do not understand why you feel heavy or tired. Solitude gives your mind the uninterrupted time it needs to finally complete that unfinished emotional work. I want to describe a moment that many people have experienced, but rarely talk about. Picture sitting alone in a room in the evening, the light fading outside the window, no music playing, no conversation happening, just stillness. In that stillness, a memory rises up that you had not thought about in a long time. Maybe it is a conversation that hurt you, or a moment you wish you could change. Your chest feels tight, your eyes might even fill with tears. This moment feels uncomfortable, but it is actually a gift. It means your mind finally trusts the quiet enough to bring that memory forward so it can be released. If you had been surrounded by noise in that same moment, that memory would have stayed buried, continuing to affect you from beneath the surface without you even realizing it. There is a reason why so many people describe crying alone as feeling different from crying in front of others. When you cry in front of people, part of your attention is still focused on how you appear to them, even if you are not trying to perform. But when you cry alone, there is no audience, no performance, and no need to manage anyone else's reaction. This allows the emotion to move through you fully and completely, instead of being held back or softened. This is one of the clearest examples of how solitude allows healing that social settings simply cannot provide in the same way. I also want to talk about the value of silence for processing anger, because this is an emotion many people struggle to handle honestly. In a group setting, expressing anger can feel dangerous because it might damage a relationship or create conflict. So people often swallow their anger, smile, and pretend everything is fine. But in solitude, there is no relationship to protect and no conflict to avoid. You can finally allow yourself to feel the full weight of that anger, examine where it is coming from, and understand what it is trying to tell you. This honest examination is something noise never allows, because noise is always focused outward, on other people and other reactions, rather than inward, on your own truth. I believe healing is not something that happens by accident. It requires intention, and it requires space. Solitude provides that space in a way that nothing else can. It is not always comfortable, and I will not pretend that it is easy to sit with painful feelings instead of distracting yourself from them. But every time you choose stillness over noise, you are giving your heart the chance to release something it has been holding on to for far too long. And over time, this practice does not just heal old wounds. It builds a kind of emotional strength that allows you to face future pain with more courage, because you already know that solitude, uncomfortable as it may feel in the moment, is always where your healing truly begins. Number 5. Describe why successful people protect their alone time fiercely. Have you ever noticed that the most accomplished people you know or have read about often guard their time alone the same way a person guards something extremely valuable to them? They say no to invitations that others would jump at. They wake up early, before the rest of the world is awake, just to have a few quiet hours to themselves. They step away from meetings, phones, and conversations, not because they dislike people, but because they understand something most people never fully learn. Alone time is not a luxury for successful people. It is a requirement, and they protect it fiercely because they know exactly what it gives them. I want you to think about the difference between someone who lets their day control them and someone who controls their day. A person who allows every request, every phone call, and every social gathering to fill up their schedule is living reactively. Their time belongs to everyone else except themselves. But a person who blocks off time to be alone, who protects that time even when others do not understand it, is living with intention. They understand that their best thinking, their best planning, and their best ideas do not happen while reacting to other people's demands. Those breakthroughs happen in the quiet spaces they have deliberately carved out for themselves. Let me explain something about energy, because this is often overlooked. Every conversation, every social interaction, even pleasant ones, requires a certain amount of mental and emotional energy. This is not a bad thing. Connection with others is important and valuable. But successful people understand that energy is limited, and if they spend all of it on other people, they have nothing left to invest in their own growth, their own goals, and their own thinking. Alone time is where that energy gets restored. It is where the mind gets to stop performing for others and simply exist quietly, recovering strength for the next challenge ahead. Without this recovery time, even the most talented person will eventually run out of the mental sharpness required to keep succeeding. I have studied the habits of many people who reached high levels of achievement, and one pattern shows up again and again. They treat their alone time as seriously as they treat an important business meeting. They do not apologize for it, and they do not let guilt talk them out of it. Many people feel guilty when they choose solitude over socializing, worried that others might see them as distant or unfriendly. But successful people learn to release that guilt because they understand a simple truth. If they do not protect their own thinking time, nobody else is going to protect it for them. The world will always find ways to fill up your schedule if you let it, and only you can decide to draw the line and say, "This time belongs to me." There is also a deeper emotional reason why successful people value solitude so highly. Achieving meaningful goals requires facing failure, criticism, and self-doubt along the way. Nobody escapes this part of the journey. In alone time, a person gets the space to process these difficult emotions honestly, without needing to explain themselves to anyone or manage how others perceive their struggle. This privacy allows them to be completely honest with themselves about what is working and what is not working, without the added pressure of an audience watching their every move. That honesty, developed quietly and privately, becomes the foundation for the next wise decision they make in their journey forward. I want to give you a picture of how this plays out in a normal day. Imagine someone who wakes up an hour before their family, sits alone with a warm drink, and simply thinks. No phone, no noise, no conversation. In that hour, they review their goals, they notice what has been bothering them, and they plan their next steps calmly and clearly. Compare that to someone who wakes up already rushing, already reacting to messages and demands from the moment their eyes open. By the end of the day, the first person has made steady, thoughtful progress toward what matters to them, while the second person has simply survived a chaotic day without truly moving forward. This is the quiet advantage that alone time gives to those who protect it. I also believe alone time protects something even more important than productivity, and that is a person's sense of identity. When you are constantly surrounded by other people, it becomes very easy to absorb their opinions, their moods, and their expectations until you lose track of what you actually think and feel yourself. Alone time gives you the chance to check in with yourself regularly, to ask whether you are still aligned with your own values and goals, or whether you have slowly been shaped by everyone else's voice instead of your own. Successful people protect this check-in process fiercely because they understand that losing touch with their own identity is one of the fastest ways to lose direction in their life and their work. I want to leave you with something important to consider about your own daily life. You do not need fame or wealth to start protecting your alone time the way successful people do. You simply need to recognize its value and refuse to let it be pushed aside by the constant demands of the world around you. Start small if you need to. Protect even 15 or 20 minutes a day where nobody else has access to your attention. Guard that time the same way you would guard something you consider precious, because in many ways, it truly is. The clarity, the energy, and the self-understanding that come from that quiet time are exactly what separate people who drift through life reacting to everything from people who move through life with purpose and direction. Number 6. Explain how solitude helps you hear your true voice. I want to ask you a simple question. When was the last time you made a decision, gave an opinion, or chose a direction in life without thinking first about what someone else might say about it? For many people, this is harder to answer than it seems, because so much of what we call our own thinking has actually been shaped by the voices of parents, friends, co-workers, and even strangers on a screen. Today I want to talk about something that most people never take the time to notice. Underneath all those borrowed voices, there is a true voice that belongs only to you, and solitude is the one place where that voice can finally be heard clearly. From the moment we are young, we are surrounded by opinions. What we should wear, what we should study, what kind of job is respectable, what kind of life is considered successful. These opinions do not disappear as we grow older. They simply become quieter, blending into the background of our thoughts, until we start to believe they are our own original ideas. This is not something anyone does on purpose. It happens naturally, because human beings are deeply influenced by the people and environments around them. But if you never step away from that constant influence, you may spend your entire life following a voice that was never truly yours to begin with. Let me explain this with a simple comparison. Imagine a room filled with several radios, all playing different stations at the same volume. If you are standing in that room, it becomes almost impossible to focus on any single station clearly, because the sounds blend together into confusion. Your mind works in a similar way when it is constantly surrounded by other people's opinions. Every voice adds another station playing in the background, and your own true thoughts get lost somewhere in that noise. Solitude works like turning off every radio except one. When the outside noise stops, your own voice, the one that has been quietly waiting underneath everything else, finally becomes clear enough to hear. I want to talk about something important regarding identity, because I believe this is where the real value of this idea lives. Many people go through life uncertain about who they truly are, not because they lack depth, but because they have never given themselves the quiet space needed to explore their own thoughts without interruption. They know how to answer questions the way others expect them to answer. They know how to fit into conversations smoothly. But if you ask them what they truly believe, separate from what they have been taught to believe, many struggle to answer honestly. This is not a character flaw. It is simply the natural result of a life lived constantly in the presence of other people's expectations. I remember thinking about how children often express their true voice much more naturally than adults do. A child left alone with crayons and paper will create something completely original, without worrying about what anyone else thinks of it. But as we grow older, we learn to filter our thoughts and actions through the expectations of others. And slowly, that original voice becomes buried under layers of caution and comparison. Solitude gives adults the rare chance to return to that same freedom children naturally have. When nobody is watching or judging, you can finally think, feel, and express yourself honestly, without the constant filter of trying to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. There is also a physical and emotional shift that happens during solitude that supports this process. When you are alone, your body relaxes in a way it simply cannot when you are being observed or evaluated by others. Your shoulders drop, your breathing slows, your facial expressions stop being managed for an audience. This relaxed state creates the perfect condition for your true thoughts to surface, because your mind is no longer using energy to manage how you appear to someone else. I believe this physical relaxation is just as important as the mental clarity solitude provides, because the two are deeply connected. A tense body often produces guarded, filtered thoughts, while a relaxed body allows honest, unfiltered thoughts to rise naturally to the surface. Let me give you a picture of what this can look like in real life. Imagine someone sitting alone by a window, watching the rain fall outside, with no phone nearby and no plans to be anywhere else. In that quiet moment, a thought arrives that feels different from their usual thinking. It feels less like something borrowed from someone else's expectations, and more like something that has always been true, simply waiting for a quiet enough moment to be noticed. This is what I mean by hearing your true voice. It is not a dramatic, sudden discovery. It is often a soft, simple realization that quietly surfaces the moment external noise finally stops pulling your attention away from yourself. I want you to understand that discovering your true voice through solitude is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing practice, something you return to again and again throughout your life. Because the noise of the world never fully stops trying to speak over you. Every time you choose quiet reflection over constant distraction, you strengthen your ability to recognize your own true thoughts among all the borrowed opinions surrounding you. Over time, this practice builds a kind of inner confidence that cannot be shaken easily by outside pressure, because you have spent real time listening closely enough to know exactly what you believe, separate from everyone else's noise. That clarity, built quietly through solitude, becomes one of the most valuable things you will ever develop in your entire life. Number 7. Show why being alone teaches self-discipline and patience. Think about a moment when nobody was checking on you, nobody was watching to see if you followed through, and the only person responsible for your actions was you. This is exactly what solitude offers, and this is exactly why it becomes one of the greatest teachers of self-discipline and patience that a person can ever have. When there is no one else in the room to hold you accountable, you either learn to hold yourself accountable or you learn to let yourself slide. Today I want to explain why choosing the first path, again and again, in the quiet moments when nobody is watching, builds a kind of strength that group settings simply cannot teach. In a group, discipline often comes from outside pressure. You show up to work on time because your coworkers expect it. You finish a task because someone is waiting for it. You behave a certain way because people are watching and forming opinions about you. This kind of discipline is useful, but it depends heavily on external motivation. The moment that outside pressure disappears, many people struggle to keep going, because they never built the internal muscle required to push themselves forward without someone else watching. Solitude removes every external pressure completely, and this is exactly why it becomes such a powerful training ground. When you finish a difficult task while completely alone, with nobody to impress and nobody to answer to, you are proving something important to yourself. You are proving that your discipline comes from within, not from the presence of an audience. Let me explain how patience develops in a similar way. In social settings, patience is often reinforced by politeness and social expectations. You wait your turn because it is rude not to. You listen quietly because interrupting would seem disrespectful. This kind of patience is shaped by the presence of others watching your behavior. But real patience, the kind that helps you push through difficult goals over long periods of time, is built in solitude, where there is no social pressure forcing you to wait calmly. When you are alone, working towards something that takes weeks or months to complete, with no one clapping for small progress, and no one reminding you to keep going, you are forced to develop patience purely from your own inner resolve. This kind of patience becomes incredibly reliable, because it does not depend on anyone else's encouragement to keep it alive. I want to describe a picture that shows this clearly. Imagine someone sitting alone, practicing a skill they are not very good at yet, maybe learning a new language or working through a difficult subject. There is no teacher standing over them, no classmate to compete with, no applause for small improvements. Progress is slow, sometimes frustratingly slow, and the temptation to quit rises again and again. In that lonely, quiet struggle, something important happens every time they choose to continue anyway. They are teaching their mind that discomfort does not have to lead to giving up. They are teaching their body that waiting for results, even when progress feels invisible, is something they are capable of enduring. This lesson, learned quietly and repeatedly in solitude, becomes one of the strongest foundations for future success in any area of life. There is also an emotional layer to this that I think deserves real attention. Being alone with a difficult task often brings up frustration, boredom, and self-doubt much faster than working in a group does. In a group, these uncomfortable feelings can be distracted away through conversation or shared laughter. But alone, there is nowhere to hide from them. You must sit with your own frustration and decide, in that very moment, whether you will let it stop you or whether you will keep moving despite it. This repeated choice, made quietly, without anyone knowing the internal battle taking place, is exactly where self-discipline is forged. Nobody sees this struggle happening, which means nobody can give you credit for winning it except yourself. And I believe this private victory builds a much deeper form of confidence than any public achievement ever could. I also want to talk about how solitude teaches patience with results, not just patience with tasks. When you are surrounded by other people, it becomes easy to compare your progress to theirs, which often creates a rushed, anxious feeling about needing to catch up or keep pace. But in solitude, comparison naturally fades away, because there is no one else's timeline to measure yourself against. This allows patience to grow in its purest form, focused entirely on your own personal growth, rather than someone else's pace. A person who learns to be patient with their own progress, without needing to compare it to anyone else, develops a calmness that stays steady, even when results take much longer to appear than originally expected. I have come to believe that self-discipline built in solitude tends to be far more durable than discipline built through outside pressure. Discipline that depends on someone watching you will weaken the moment that person leaves the room. But discipline built quietly, in the private moments when no one else could see your effort, becomes part of who you are, not just something you perform for others. This is why people who spend real time alone, working through difficult tasks and long-term goals without an audience, often develop a kind of quiet strength that other people notice without fully understanding where it came from. It came from countless private moments of choosing patience and discipline when nobody else was there to demand it. And that private practice, repeated over time, becomes one of the most valuable habits a person can ever build in their entire life. Number 8. Teach how solitude turns confusion into clarity and purpose. There is a particular kind of tiredness that has nothing to do with physical work. It is the tiredness of not knowing what you actually want, of moving through your days without a clear sense of direction, feeling pulled in different directions by different responsibilities and expectations. This kind of confusion can sit inside a person for years, quietly draining their energy, because confusion itself is exhausting. Today I want to talk about how solitude becomes the place where that confusion finally starts to lift, and how the same quiet space that feels uncomfortable at first can slowly reveal a sense of purpose that busy, noisy living could never uncover. Confusion often grows stronger in noise, not weaker. When your days are packed with obligations, conversations, and constant activity, you rarely get the chance to stop and ask yourself simple but important questions. What do I actually want? What matters to me? Why does this particular goal keep pulling at my attention? These questions require stillness to be answered honestly, and a busy life leaves very little room for stillness. This is why so many people feel confused about their direction, even while appearing successful and busy on the outside. They have been moving so quickly that they have never given themselves the chance to sit down and actually think clearly about where all that movement is leading them. Let me describe this using a simple picture. Imagine trying to read a map while walking quickly through a crowded street, bumping into people, distracted by noise from every direction. It becomes almost impossible to study that map carefully enough to understand exactly where you are and where you need to go. Now imagine sitting down quietly on a bench, away from the crowd, with the same map in your hands. Suddenly, the details become clear, the paths become visible, the direction becomes obvious. Solitude works exactly this way for your life. The information you need to find clarity has usually been available to you the entire time, but you needed a quiet space to actually study it carefully, instead of glancing at it while rushing through a busy life. I want to talk about something important regarding the emotional side of confusion, because confusion is not just a mental problem, it is also an emotional experience. Confusion often brings a feeling of anxiety, a sense that something is wrong but you cannot quite name what it is. In a noisy environment, this anxious feeling gets pushed aside constantly, because there is always something else demanding your attention. But in solitude, that anxious feeling finally gets the space to be examined honestly. You can sit with it, ask yourself where it is coming from, and slowly begin to understand what your confusion has actually been trying to tell you all along. Many people discover that their confusion was never really about not knowing what they wanted. It was about being too busy to listen to what they already knew deep down. There is a process I want to explain that happens naturally when you spend consistent time alone. At first, solitude can actually increase the feeling of confusion because without noise to distract you, every unresolved question in your mind suddenly becomes loud and demanding. This can feel overwhelming, and many people mistake this initial discomfort as proof that solitude is not helping them. But if you stay with it, something shifts. The questions that seemed loud and chaotic at first begin to sort themselves out. Some questions turn out to be less important than they seemed. Others reveal themselves as the real issues that have been quietly shaping your unhappiness. This sorting process takes time, and it cannot be rushed, but it only happens through repeated quiet reflection, not through busy distraction. I have noticed something meaningful about the difference between goals chosen in noise and goals chosen in solitude. Goals chosen while surrounded by comparison and outside pressure often reflect what other people value, rather than what you personally value. You might chase a certain career because it looks impressive, or pursue a certain lifestyle because everyone around you seems to want it. But goals discovered in solitude tend to feel different. They feel quieter, more personal, and often more sustainable because they come from genuine reflection rather than social comparison. This is why purpose, discovered through solitude, tends to last much longer than motivation borrowed from outside influence. It is rooted in something real that belongs specifically to you. Let me offer a picture that captures this well. Picture someone sitting alone early in the morning with a notebook, writing down thoughts without any plan of what to say, simply letting their mind spill onto the page. At first, the writing might feel scattered and confused, jumping from one topic to another without any clear direction. But as they keep writing, patterns begin to emerge. Certain themes keep repeating. Certain frustrations keep surfacing. Certain desires keep appearing again and again, even when they try to write about something else. This repetition is not an accident. It is often the clearest signal of what truly matters to that person, and it usually only becomes visible through quiet, uninterrupted reflection like this. I believe clarity and purpose are not things you discover once and keep forever. They require regular quiet time to stay sharp, because life constantly introduces new noise, new distractions, and new confusion. This means solitude is not a one-time solution, but an ongoing practice, something you return to whenever confusion starts creeping back into your life. Every time you choose to sit quietly with your own thoughts, instead of avoiding them through busyness, you are giving yourself another opportunity to see your path more clearly. Over time, this repeated practice does not just clear away confusion temporarily. It builds a stronger, more consistent sense of purpose that continues guiding your decisions, your goals, and your everyday choices long after that quiet moment alone has ended.